Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're going to look at Ian Stannard's famous victory at the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad in 2015. Ian Stannard, of course, is retired. In my opinion, Ian Stannard was a somewhat underrated classics rider. He did manage to win Omloop Het Nieuwsblad twice and even finished on the podium in Paris-Roubaix, but many people did think that he was capable of winning Paris-Roubaix given the right conditions. Anyways, we're going to take a look back at his famous win against three Ettix Quickstep riders. Anyways, we joined the race with 45.4 kilometers to go, and at this point there have been a number of moves away, including Luke Rowe, but this truncated peloton have largely been put together, and decisive Quickstep are marking every single move, really exploiting this phenomenal team that they've got here. As we can see here, any move that goes away has at least one Ettix Quickstep rider. With 43.6 kilometers to go, Stijn Vandenberg puts on the pressure at the front on this 2-kilometer pavé section. The team that decisive Quickstep brought along was absolutely phenomenal, with Tom Boonen in there, Zdeněk Stybar, Nicky Terpstra, Matteo Trentin, and of course Stijn Vandenberg, just to name a few of them. The significant part here was that Tom Boonen, Mr. Paris-Roubaix, had not won Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, and that was not for the lack of trying. In 2005, young Tom Boonen celebrated the victory with Nick Nuyens, who finished first, and Tom Boonen came in a very tight second as they celebrated together across the line. In 2007, he finished third behind Fletcher and the winner, Pozzato, and instead he actually went on to win Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne the very next day after this race. In 2012, he came agonized and close again, losing out in a sprint to Sepp van Marcke, and third place on the day was Fletcher. With 43 kilometers to go, the aforementioned Tom Boonen gets to the front and puts on a lot of pressure, and Ettix Quickstep are really making the use of their numbers. Moments later, we get our first proper look at Ian Stannard, who gets himself to the front as Tom Boonen just glances around to see how many of his imperious teammates are there. The next rider to get to the front is Sepp van Marcke, and he really puts on the pressure here and ups the tempo so much that even Ian Stannard is struggling to hold his wheel, and the group is really strung out. Two of the Quickstep riders are caught behind and they have to make their way past the riders who can't quite hold this tempo. But Ian Stannard is not able to shut the gap that Sepp van Marcke is creating with this increase of tempo. Ian Stannard is struggling so much that Tom Boonen and Nicky Terpstra even have to come around the Brit, but all of the riders are probably breathing a sign of relief as moments later they seen Sepp van Marcke raise his hand. The unlucky Belgian has actually got a puncture in this very crucial stage of the race. Tom Boonen comes around his countryman, and moments later we have this extraordinary view of three Ettix Quickstep riders and Ian Stannard. The quartet have already built up quite a noticeable gap if we see it here from the helicopter shot, and we can even see that it's even getting a bit windy on this section. Nicky Terpstra pushes on at the front with Tom Boonen, Stijn Vandenberg, and at the back we have Ian Stannard determined to opening up this gap. They already have a gap of 19 seconds. In the chasing group, Lotto and Nyombo are determined to get their strong team leader back to the front. The leading quartet get themselves onto the Molenberg with a lead of 30 seconds, and at this point Ian Stannard is a bit further behind the three other riders. Behind the quartet, it seems that the cream has risen to the top with Sepp van Marcke, Greg van Avermaet, and crucially another Ettix Quickstep rider, Zdeněk Stybar, sitting on the back. By the time we reach the top of the Molenberg, these three riders have built up a sizable gap to the other riders, and if we look at it with 2021 vision, this group is actually filled with Omloop Het Nieuwsblad winners. Of course, we had Sepp van Marcke in 2012, Greg van Avermaet won in 2016 and 2017, and Zdeněk Stybar won in 2020. The leading quartet have a 33-second lead when they are on the Paddestrad and even make life a bit more easy for themselves by going onto the smooth tarmac instead of the cobblestones. And Ian Stannard, of course, follows them as well. In the chasing trio, Stybar is doing his best Ian Stannard impression by not helping the two other riders to close the gap to his three other teammates. With 23 kilometers to go, the leading quartet experience a bit of crosswinds from the side, but Ian Stannard has made sure to tuck himself in very neatly, and one of the Ettix Quickstep riders is looking around maybe to see if Ian Stannard is still there. But I really don't understand why they haven't forced Ian Stannard through to do a turn, even though they do have more numbers, and it seems like the three Quickstep riders are either scared of Greg van Avermaet, which they shouldn't be because Ian Stannard actually beat him in the sprint the year before, so that means they should be more afraid of Stannard, or maybe they're a bit afraid of what they saw from Sepp van Marcke before he got that puncture earlier on. Regardless, Sepp van Marcke and Greg van Avermaet worked together to try and reduce this lead down, and they've reduced it down to 23 seconds when we come inside 21 kilometers to go. The lack of energy expenditure by Ian Stannard can best be shown here, where he's freewheeling compared to the three Quickstep riders. Meanwhile, the three chasing riders are nearly taken out by the road furniture here and have to do an amazing diversion around not only spectators but also parked cars. But Greg van Avermaet and Sepp van Marcke aren't able to reduce the gap here. The leading quartet on the Langemutte, the 2.5 kilometer pavé section, are experiencing a bit more crosswinds, and that's why we see that unique formation. On this section, the trio, with no help from Stibar, managed to close the gap 5 more seconds, so there's only 18 seconds up to the leading quartet at this point, and Ian Stannard is still sitting in his favorite position at this point. With 16 kilometers to go, they've extended their lead by a small margin to 21 seconds and 1 minute and 36 seconds to the next nearest group. And next we see Ian Stannard, wearing the number 1, pull up to his team car, and what could this team car be saying at this moment in time? 3 against 1. The odds are definitely not in his favor, and maybe he is just riding for second place at this point in his mind. With less than 12 kilometers to go, Ettix Quickstep have still not forced Ian Stannard to the front, and they still do have the chasing trio after them, of course. But then finally, with 7.3 kilometers to go and a 31-second buffer to the chasing trio, we see that they've changed their formation here, putting Tom Bonen, their best sprinter, behind Ian Stannard to mark him, presumably. But this isn't a fresh Tom Bonen. We already saw Tom Bonen do a lot of work in the early stages at the Bosberg, and he's also done a lot of turns to even make this move credible. And at this stage, Ian Stannard is fresher than Bonen for obvious reasons. We finally get an offensive move with 5.2 kilometers to go from the finish line, with Nicky Terpstra getting to the front and upping the pace significantly. Stijn van den Berg seems like he is following Nicky Terpstra's wheel for a bit and then stops pedaling. Ian Stannard notices this and makes his way around the Belgian and in pursuit of Nick Terpstra, and Terpstra even looks around to see if he has managed to drop Ian Stannard. And then after 35 kilometers of coasting on the trio, he's finally at the front of these Quickstep riders. Tom Bonen sees this momentary lull in tempo as an opportunity and attacks hard, and he gets a sizable gap already, the former green jersey winner of the Tour de France. Ian Stannard gets to the front of the two other Quickstep riders and just rides at his own tempo. From the helicopter shot, we can actually see the immense gap that Tom Bonen managed to make in such a short amount of time, and with only 4 kilometers to go, Ian Stannard really has his work cut out here. But Ian Stannard gets to the front of the two Ettix Quickstep riders and slowly wheels in the Belgian superstar, one pedal stroke at a time, and having sat on the wheel for 35 kilometers, the Brit definitely has a lot of energy in his tank. Ian Stannard manages to make the catch, and Tom Bonen just sees that the Brit has caught him. And then we get another move here, Nicky Terpstra winding it up, really going hard, doing a counter-attack at this point. And here we don't quite understand what is going on with Stijn van den Berg. Why is he following Nicky Terpstra? He should be on the wheel of Ian Stannard at this point, making sure that the Brit does all the work and not creating a somewhat intermediate slipstream for Ian Stannard to use to catch Nick Terpstra. So this was a complete tactical error by Stijn van den Berg, and we see moments later that Ian Stannard does exactly that, tries to follow in the slipstream of Stijn van den Berg, and we can see Nick Terpstra actually looks around, probably thinking to himself, what are you doing, Stijn? And because of this, Ian Stannard makes light work of it and catches the Dutch and the Belgian rider. And then with 2.9 kilometers to go, the defending champion makes his move, and here we get this hilarious image of 3 Ettix Quickstep riders chasing down the sole Sky rider, and what an incredible image here. He's sat on for 35 kilometers and now he's making the Quickstep riders pay for making him not do a turn at this point. These three Quickstep riders are on the limit, and the first one to bow out is Stein van der Berg, and he does this in a quite emphatic manner, flicks the elbow, and then he drops like a stone. Nicky Terpstra and Tom Boonen tries to close the gap to Ian Stannard, and it's only Nicky Terpstra who just about manages to make it onto the wheel of Ian Stannard, but Tom Boonen is significantly fatigued at this point. Nicky Terpstra is definitely not the rider out of the two that they wanted on Ian Stannard's wheel. It would definitely be Tom Boonen, as he did outsprint Greg van Avermaet, as mentioned before, the year before. Tom Boonen gets agonizingly close to the leading duo, and it can only be about a second between them, but the superstar is of course fatigued after the long day in the saddle, having done a lot of the work and also that very hard attack. But Ian Stannard is fresh and he's really stomping the pedals here, making sure that Tom Boonen does not join him and Nicky Terpstra, because he knows Tom Boonen has a very good sprint on him and Ian Stannard can probably not match the sprint even at this stage. Ian Stannard managed to open up the gap a bit more to about 2.5 seconds. As they come into the finish, Nicky Terpstra is at the front and Ian Stannard sits in his slipstream, and for whatever reason the Dutchman has proceeded to open up the sprint with 300 meters to go. He's not a sprinter by any means, and Ian Stannard is just sitting in his slipstream, and here we can see Stannard managed to just about come around Nicky Terpstra and takes the win here. Ian Stannard takes the top of the podium for the second year in a row, and we get this visibly disappointing image of Tom Boonen. Quickstep really did a tactical error on many fronts. Were they scared of Sepp van Marcke and Greg van Avermaet, and didn't they think that they had a better chance if they had Stibar 4 against 3 at that stage? But nevertheless, Ian Stannard takes this memorable win, and what a win it was as well. That's it for this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and as always, thank you for watching and see you next time.